Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive, where we take those deep dives into fascinating topics. And today we're going to be looking at The Music Advantage by Dr. Anita Collins. It really is amazing all the things that music can do for child development, especially really young children.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the things that was most interesting to me in the book was just how early that impact starts.
Yeah, like right from day one. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? Like the book talks about how even a baby's brain is processing sound as music.
It's true. Yeah, it's incredible. They're picking up on those little nuances like pitch and rhythm and timbre. It's all registering in those little brains as a musical experience.
Right, like even just like a simple no from a parent. It's kind of funny to think about it that way.
I know, it seems so basic, right? But for a baby, it's a whole symphony of sound. And Dr. Collins actually shares this really funny anecdote about using her teacher voice with her own baby daughter.
Oh, yeah, I remember that part. It really highlights how we instinctively use musical elements when we communicate with babies.
Exactly. And it makes you realize that those early interactions are laying the groundwork for language development.
Yeah, it's like they're building this massive library of sounds in their brains, ready to be mashed with meaning when they start to learn words.
It's really quite remarkable how the brain works like that. And, it's interesting because Dr. Collins even suggests that music might be even more fundamental to being human than language itself.
Really? I mean, I know music is important, but even more than language.
Well, that's what makes the book so thought-provoking. And there's some compelling research to support it, too. Like, there was this Canadian study that found a link between early musical interaction, like singing or moving to a beat with an infant, and the infant's later helping behaviors.
So like the more music they experienced as babies, the more likely they were to be helpful later on.
Exactly. It suggests that those early musical experiences are somehow fostering empathy and pro-social behavior. It's almost like music is tapping into this primal need for connection and belonging, kind of like we see in tribal cultures.
Yeah, like it's strengthening those social and emotional bonds that are so crucial for development.
Precisely. And the best part is you don't need to be a professional musician to reap these benefits. It's not about being a virtuoso. It's about the connection, the emotion you bring to those musical interactions with your child.
Yeah, and I think that's really reassuring for parents, right? Like you don't need to be a perfect singer. You just need to be present and engaged in those musical moments.
Absolutely. It's about creating a rich and diverse soundscape for your child to explore and to learn from. And speaking of learning, that's where the idea of predisposition comes into play. Dr. Collins talks about how some children just seem naturally drawn to music, right?
Yeah, like those kids who are always tapping their feet or humming along to a tune.
Exactly. And she suggests that it might be related to how sensitive they are to sound. Some children's brains are just wired to be more attuned to those auditory nuances.
So it's not necessarily about talent, but about how their brains are processing the world around them.
Right. It's more about their sensory experience. And it's fascinating because in some cases, those children who seem exceptionally musical might actually be using those enhanced auditory skills to learn language more effectively.
So it's like their musicality is actually a sign of their strong auditory processing, which is also benefiting their language development.
It's a really interesting perspective, and it kind of flips the script on how we traditionally view musical giftedness.
Now, remember in the book, Dr. Collins also talks about her own personal struggles with reading as a child. And this is really interesting because her mother was a reading specialist.
Yeah, it's one of those unexpected twists that really highlights how complex learning can be.
Right, like you'd think with a reading specialist as a mom, she'd have no problem, but that wasn't the case.
And she actually didn't discover a possible connection to her music training until much later.
Oh, right. She suggests that learning to read music might have actually helped her to eventually learn to read words.
It makes you think about all those intricate neural connections that are happening in the brain when we engage with both music and language.
And it makes sense when you consider all the different skills involved in reading. Visual and auditory processing, working memory, decoding sounds.
Exactly. All those complex cognitive functions that are crucial for literacy. And music training, especially reading music, seems to strengthen those very same brain areas.
So it's like cross-training for the brain. In a way, music is strengthening those foundational skills that are essential for reading.
Precisely. And it's not just speculation. There's actually research that supports this idea. Studies have shown that music programs can significantly improve literacy skills, especially for children from disadvantaged backgrounds who might not have had as much exposure to language-rich environments.
That's really incredible, especially when you consider that music is often seen as an extra, something that's nice to have but not essential. But this research suggests that it can actually play a crucial role in closing those learning gaps.
Right. It's not just about enriching a child's life, it's about equipping them with the fundamental skills they need to thrive academically and beyond. And it's really changing the way we think about learning and development as a whole.
Music is more than just entertainment. It's a powerful tool for unlocking a child's potential in so many ways.
And you know what else is interesting? All those clapping games and things we did as kids, like keeping a beat, it turns out that stuff was actually helping us develop important skills for reading.
Oh, you mean like those playground rhymes and things?
Yeah, exactly. Things like that. It seems so simple, but keeping a steady beat actually requires some pretty complex coordination in the brain between, the auditory system and the motor system.
I hadn't really thought about it that way. But I guess it makes sense. It's all about timing and rhythm.
Right, exactly. It's like a precursor to those skills that we need for reading, being able to process the sounds of language and then, translate those sounds into written symbols.
So all that rhythmic play is kind of like priming the brain for reading later on.
Yeah, you could say that. And Dr. Collins actually talks about this really interesting case study in the book. There was this little boy who was having trouble keeping a beat. And as it turned out, he was also struggling with reading.
Oh, wow. So like the beat-keeping challenges were maybe an early sign of his reading difficulties.
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely raises some interesting questions. Like, is there a connection between a child's natural sense of rhythm and their ability to learn to read?
That's fascinating. I wonder if there's any research on that.
Well, there's definitely some emerging research in that area, like, trying to understand whether there's something like an intrinsic sense of beat that's sort of wired into our brains and whether that varies from person to person. But even if we don't fully understand the underlying mechanisms, it's clear that providing lots of opportunities for rhythmic activities can only help. It helps to strengthen those neural pathways that are involved in reading.
Right, makes sense. So we've been talking a lot about the cognitive benefits of music, but I'm curious, what about attention? I mean, we all know how hard it can be to focus these days, right? Both for kids and adults.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Attention is a huge topic these days. And, music can actually play a really interesting role in helping to develop those attention skills.
Oh, really? You mean like listening to music while you work or study? I've heard mixed things about that.
Well, it's a little more nuanced than just that. Dr. Collins talks about how music learning, especially when it's done in a group setting, really requires a high level of focused attention. You have to listen really carefully, stay on beat, coordinate your actions with others. It's a real mental workout for those attention muscles.
Yeah, I can see that. It's not just passive listening, it's active engagement.
Exactly. And there's research that shows that musically trained children often have better attention skills than their peers. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that music demands such persistent focus.
So rather than thinking of music as a distraction, we should be encouraging it as a way to actually build those attention skills.
Exactly. And, there are so many fun and engaging ways to do that. Dr. Collins gives this great example of a passing the beat game that she does with her students. It's a really simple but effective way to work on things like inhibitory control and teamwork, all while having fun.
That sounds great. I bet kids love that.
Oh, yeah, they do. And it's amazing to see how something as simple as a musical game can really bring a group together and help them learn these valuable skills. And, speaking of skills, another important one that music can help with is resilience.
Oh, yeah, resilience. That's so important these days, especially with all the challenges that kids are facing.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that Dr. Collins really emphasizes in the book is the idea that learning music is all about embracing those moments of frustration that inevitably come up when we're trying to master something new.
Yeah, like when you're trying to learn a new instrument or a difficult piece of music, there's always going to be those times when you just want to give up.
Exactly. And, instead of trying to avoid those feelings of frustration, music actually provides a really safe and supportive space to experience them. It teaches kids that it's okay to make mistakes, to struggle, to keep trying, even when things are tough.
I love how she calls it microdosing on frustration. Like those little challenges actually make us stronger in the long run.
Precisely. And, those skills, those coping mechanisms that kids develop through music, they translate to all areas of life. It helps them to become more resilient, more persistent, more able to handle the inevitable setbacks that come their way.
That's a really powerful message, especially in a culture that often tries to shield kids from discomfort and failure. But, failing is part of learning.
Exactly. And music provides this amazing framework for learning how to navigate those challenges, how to turn frustration into triumph. Dr. Collins shares this really heartwarming anecdote in the book about a young percussion student who was really struggling to master a particular rhythm.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. It was so inspiring to see how much effort she put in and how proud she was when she finally got it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about music. Those moments of accomplishment are so tangible. You can feel them in your body, you can hear them in the sound you're creating, and it's incredibly empowering, especially for kids.
So music isn't just about cognitive development. It's about building character and confidence, too.
Absolutely. And, another important aspect of that is the development of leadership and teamwork skills. Dr. Collins has this great story about a young drummer who kind of went rogue during a performance.
Oh, yeah, the one where he started improvising and the rest of the ensemble just went with it.
Yeah, that's the one. It would have been so easy for the conductor to try to control him, get him back in line. But instead, they trusted him, they followed his lead, and it turned into this amazing, spontaneous moment of shared creativity.
That's such a great example of how music can create these unexpected opportunities for leadership to emerge, even from the youngest members of a group.
And it's not just about leadership, it's about learning how to work together, how to listen to each other, how to create something beautiful and harmonious as a team.
Music ensembles are like a microcosm of the real world in a way.
Right. They teach kids all those essential collaborative skills that are so important for success in any field, whether it's music or something else entirely. Now, what we haven't talked about yet? Something that I think a lot of parents struggle with is music's impact on productivity. Like, is it helpful or distracting when it comes to studying and things like that?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I remember my parents always telling me to turn off the music when I was doing my homework.
Right. It's that classic parental refrain. But, it's interesting because the research on this is actually pretty mixed. Dr. Collins talks about how there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to music and studying. It really depends on the individual, the task, the type of music, all sorts of factors.
So it's not as simple as just saying music is good or music is bad for productivity.
Nope, not at all. And, one of the things that she emphasizes is the importance of self-awareness, like paying attention to how different types of music affect your own focus and motivation. Some people might find that they work best in silence, while others might need music to help them concentrate.
Yeah, it's all about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that even if music can sometimes enhance focus and motivation, it can also be distracting, especially if it's music with lyrics or complex melodies. Our brains can only process so much information at once, and if we're trying to decipher lyrics while we're also trying to read or write, it can lead to cognitive overload.
Right, like trying to do too many things at once.
Exactly. However, there is some research that suggests that certain types of music, like upbeat classical music or instrumental music, can actually boost creativity and divergent thinking.
Oh, really? So like listening to Mozart while you brainstorm?
Well, maybe not Mozart specifically, but that's the general idea. It's about finding the right soundtrack for the task at hand. And it really underscores the versatility of music and its nuanced effects on our cognitive processes.
Well, this deep dive into the music advantage has been so eye-opening. It's really changed the way I think about music's role in child development and in learning in general.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating book. It makes you realize that music is so much more than just entertainment. It's a fundamental part of what makes us human, and it has this incredible potential to unlock a child's potential in so many ways.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the music advantage, it really strikes me that music learning has this incredible lasting impact on a child's life. It's not just about what happens in the classroom or during those practice sessions.
Absolutely. The benefits of music learning, they extend way beyond those formal settings, It shapes so many aspects of a child's development, cognitive, personal, even their future success.
Yeah, let's talk about that a bit more. What does research tell us about those long-term benefits of music learning?
Well, there have been studies that link music training to all sorts of positive outcomes, things like improved cognitive skills, better academic achievement, personal growth, even career success later in life. It's an investment that really does pay off in the long run.
It sounds like music learning isn't just about picking up specific skills. It's about developing a certain mindset, a way of approaching challenges and embracing lifelong learning.
Exactly. Music teaches kids so many valuable lessons like perseverance, discipline, creativity, empathy. And those qualities are so important no matter what field a child ends up pursuing.
So music really becomes this training ground for life, equipping kids with the tools they need to navigate the world in all its complexities.
That's a great way to put it. And it's a powerful reminder that music is more than just a fun pastime. It's truly a fundamental part of what makes us human. It has this amazing potential to help kids unlock their full potential.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm honestly just in awe of the power of music. It shapes our brains, our emotions, our ability to connect with the world around us, and it's something we can all experience and benefit from, regardless of age or ability.
Absolutely. And I think that's the most important takeaway from the music advantage. Music is a gift that keeps on giving. It enriches our lives in countless ways, and the more we understand its power, the more we can harness it to create a brighter future for ourselves and our children.
And for all of you listening out there, I want to leave you with this thought-provoking question. How can you create a more enriching and supportive sound environment for the children in your lives? Whether it's singing a lullaby, encouraging music lessons, or simply being mindful of the soundscape around them, you have the power to make a difference in their lives through music.
And if you're eager to explore these ideas further, I highly recommend checking out Dr. Anita Collins' book, The Music Advantage. It's packed with insights and inspiration that will change the way you think about music and its impact on human development.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into the world of music and child development. We encourage you to share this episode with anyone who might be interested, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into captivating topics. And if you'd like to support our work, consider purchasing The Music Advantage through the link in our show notes. Until next time, keep those minds curious, those ears open, and always remember, the world is full of music waiting to be discovered.